Part 34. Boycott and Exile. Months passed, and the Quraysh were still reeling from the multiple blows they suffered. After the shame of losing a huge portion of their population to self-imposed exile, they lost two of their most prominent figures in Hamza and Umar. Things were going from bad to worse, and they had gathered to finally put a stop to it. The only way to do that would be to kill the Prophet. All the tribes agreed that the Banu Hashim, led by Abu Talib, must hand the Prophet over, and they would be paid any amount of blood money. They even agreed to allow a third party to kill him to avoid revenge attacks. They once again approached Abu Talib, but this time did not give him a choice in the matter. Either you hand him over, or we will cut you off from the Quraysh. In a truly unprecedented move, they threatened to disown the Banu Hashim. Abu Talib was furious and immediately refused. The boycott was comprehensive. Businesses no longer traded with the Banu Hashim. Shops no longer sold to them. Bachelors no longer married into them. Social gatherings with them were banned, and they were even denied access to food and water. It was an economic, political, and social boycott. They even formalized the boycott with a treaty, which was hung inside the Kaaba. It was said that Buaid ibn Amir wrote the treaty, so the Prophet made a specific dua against him, and his hand became paralyzed until his demise. Abu Talib then decided to undergo a self-imposed exile, and the Banu Hashim relocated to a nearby valley, eking out an existence. Relying on shrubbery and rainwater for food and water, they managed to barely survive by the grace of Allah. Due to the scarcity of nutrients in their diet, their droppings became like that of sheep. As they teetered on the brink of death, sympathizers from the Quraysh, such as the likes of Mutim ibn Adi and Hakim ibn Hizam, secretly sent in food and water. Tribal kinship was so strong that non-Muslims from the Banu Hashim also subjugated themselves to this exile with the exception of Abu Lahab, who was too cowardly to join. Instead, he revoked his allegiance to the Banu Hashim in exchange for remaining in Mecca. During this time, the Prophet would continue to give dawah to travelers and pilgrims. The boycott lasted for 2 or 3 years, and the matter was so dire that the Prophet began to make severe dua against them. O Allah, send upon them a famine like the famine of Prophet Yusuf. The Prophet's dua was accepted, and the Quraysh experienced a famine so bad that they were forced to eat dead carcasses and animal skin. The Quraysh knew that this must be due to the Prophet, so they sent some messengers to the valley to ease tensions. Meanwhile, some senior tribesmen of the Quraysh began to sympathize with the Banu Hashim, feeling guilty about the anguish their kith and kin were suffering. Hisham ibn Amr, a cousin of the Prophet, was one such advocate, and he sought a way to bring an end to the boycott. He called Zuhair ibn Abi Umaymah, alongside other sympathizers, such as Mut'im ibn Adi and Hakim ibn Hizam. Zuhair concocted a plan. They gathered for the regular council meeting, and Zuhair stood up saying,
"For how long shall we to starve our own kith and kin to death?"
Abu Jahl responded adamantly,
"Who do you think you are? We all agreed to the treaty."
Hisham then stood up.
"No, I didn't agree. It was all your idea."
Abu Jahl began to defend himself when Mutim also stood up.
"You forced this upon us."
One by one, each person stood up and added to the argument until Abu Jahl grew privy to what was happening.
"By Allah, this is a plan you have all hatched up."
However, the plan was successful in shifting public opinion. One day, the Prophet approached Abu Talib saying, "O my uncle, Allah has informed me that the treaty they wrote has been consumed by termites, except for the phrase, 'in the name of Allah.'" Abu Talib decided to stake his entire bid on the word of the Prophet, and marched into Mecca with a group of non-Muslims from the Banu Hashim. He said,
"Let's revisit this treaty and negotiate."
The Quraysh were obviously happy, as they understood that Abu Talib was ready to hand over the Prophet. As they entered the Kaaba to retrieve the treaty, which was secured in a pouch and locked inside the Kaaba, inaccessible to the public, Abu Talib said,
"My nephew has informed me that his lord has told him that the treaty is no longer in existence, except for the phrase, 'in the name of Allah.' So my challenge to you is, if that is the case, then let us be, and we will return to Mecca. And if it is not, then I will hand him over to you, and you can do as you please.
They of course agreed and opened the pouch only to find the scroll devoured, except for the phrase, "In the name of Allah." They begrudgingly stuck to the agreement and lifted the boycott.